Hello, ladies and gentlemen. So today we're going to do something a little bit different. There's been a lot of questions around the Dot Com Zambia IPO from the public. And I think there was one in particular yesterday that caught my attention. And it was on Twitter, and it was a gentleman named Mulenga. And what he writes is, the Dot Com Zambia prospectus is rather interesting. I'm still passing, but my initial reaction is, And I did see that comment, and I actually responded to his post and actually pointed out that it's actually fine. That is actually what is supposed to happen. If I am asking people, the general public to invest in the company, they should have questions and they should be skeptical. And I think part of the whole process, and this is not only to IPO, it's whenever you go and ask people for money, they will be skeptical, and they will have certain questions. And I asked him, okay, if you have concerns, what are they? And I then figured the questions that he's asking, these are questions that I've seen other people asking. And I felt like if I have to respond to him, respond to all these other people, that's not really the best way to do it. And so what we've started is every night until the IPO is done, is we will look for 2 or 3 questions from the public that are burning, but we feel are important, and we will address them on this forum. Sometimes it will be me, but I think you also need to hear from other people that are part of the IPO as well, depending on what the question is. So today, Mlenga, I really thank you for the polite discourse, and I think for you doing this the right way, and I will take the time to address at least 3 of your questions. First question you have is around Kukula Capital. They are the designated advisor and sponsoring broker for the transaction. And he also says, well, they're an IPO, a pre-IPO shareholder. How do you ensure that the work they're doing, especially on the valuation, is impartial? Okay, so a couple of things I need to clarify on this. Kukula Capital are no longer Kukula Capital itself has never been a shareholder in Dot Com Zambia. Kukula Capital Fund 1, a fund of Kukula Capital, was an early investor in Dot Com Zambia. That fund came to an end, and when a fund comes to an end, the positions that the fund held are then transferred to the beneficial owner. So if you read the prospectus, and if you go to a certain page, I do not have the page off the top of my head, but it gives you a breakdown of who all the pre-IPO shareholders are. Kukula Capital is not on that list. So I think I want to clarify that. But even if they were, let's just talk about that for a moment. Even if they were, that structure is very common globally. You see it all the time. So, for example, Goldman Sachs were a very early investor in Facebook. Morgan Stanley with Alibaba. It's a relationship, and that's what ultimately, when you get money, especially venture capital money, part of what they look for in an exit is, can you grow? Can you go public? And can we grow with you and get business from you as you grow? So those things happen all the time. And when it comes to the valuation itself, there's a way in which Kukula Capital have to professionally do it. Otherwise, it will look bad on them. And so if you look at the prospectus and you look at how the valuation is done, they break it down into multiple methods. It's almost like doing a science experiment, if you will. So they can't just wake up and say, we're going to value .com at 400 million kwacha. What that will do is it actually has reputational risk for them, because don't forget, when they present the valuation to the world, their peers are going to judge them. The regulator is going to look at them and say, what methodology did you use? Were these guys fair? Were they unfair? So I think all of those come in. So I think when it comes to impartiality, I think that's the way you've got to look at it. And I think the other aspect that I can bring out is when we went through this process, Tui, he's one of our directors. He had to abstain himself from this process because of the conflict of interest. So it was left to us as the other directors to then go through the process of picking a broker and designated advisor for that IPO. And I think if you want to see where it actually ended up working a lot better, is look at the fee structure and look at how much money Kukula is making off this transaction. We pushed them to a very low price, actually much lower than the market price, even though there's structural reasons for that. For example, the fact that we're doing a retail transaction, It was not us going to them and saying, go and find us an investor. And then they go and see some big investor, bring the money and say, we found you an investor. We're now going to charge you 4% or 10%. They're actually charging us, I believe it's like 2% or something, which is actually a lot lower. So I hope that at least addresses the question of, are Kukula Capital impartial and how are they involved in this transaction? This next question is around eTolls. Now, I'm going to address this partly because I think it's the biggest question that I think a lot of people have been asking once they read our prospectus. So unfortunately, I'm going to take a bit of time here because it's a very layered question and it covers multiple angles. So let me see if you can bear with me and let me see if I can explain this in a way that does it justice. So the first myth that I want to sort of cover, if I will, is our work in electronic tolling is not a government tender. It's not where we went out and we got some contract and at the end of the month we're getting paid. It does not work like that. The way that tolling works, it's what's called a bulk distributorship agreement. It's the same model Zesco would use. It's the same model TalkTime would use. It's the same model that the DSTV would use. What they do is they bring in a number of what are called distributors. They tell those distributors, and in our case, come and buy the tolls from us in advance at a discount. Okay, then you can go back and you can sell it to the public at a profit. So in our case, it's 4%. So the way it works is basically we go to the NRFA, we then say, here's 96 kwacha. We can then sell that eToll value at 100 kwacha. And they bring in multiple parties to do this. And then they let the market decide who they want to have a business relationship with. So there's no tender here. So when we talk about our dominant position, we got that by competing, not by being handed a government tender, which if they turn around and they take away, we've got nothing. We had to beat banks. We had to beat the telcos. We had to beat other technology companies to basically become the major distributor. So we did originally build the tolling technology back in 2017, but that was under a pilot program. And once we did it, the NRFA later built their own version. And then we basically had to become a distributor. We joined that ecosystem and we had to compete as customers. So when we look at the tolling landscape, and I think all of this is explained in the prospectus, there are actually 8 companies that do what we do. There's also one bank, and may I add, it's one of the biggest bank, and there are 3 telcos. And Dot Com Zambia, in just the NRFA component, has a 45 to 50% market share in what is a competitive market. So the question here should not really be around, is it a tender? It should be, what did Dot Com Zambia do right? Competing against other entities, some of them that have much deeper pockets than we do. Okay, and really that answer will always going to come down to performance. Okay, now let's just talk about one other aspect. eToll is not one contract with one party. I've seen some parties going on if NRFA take away their contract, the business is going to go bankrupt. No, eToll is an ecosystem and it has multiple layers. Remember, I just talked about who all the competitors are. NRFA is one part of it. There are also private toll plazas as well. And it just happens to be that those private toll plazas who are independent of NRFA happen to use systems that we provided to them to run their eToll operation. Okay? We have over 300 clients. We have some of whom we actually have long-standing relationships with. Some of those relationships go into even technical integrations, how we take toll data and feed it into a system of their choice. So our footprint is wide. It's not some sort of single thing like it's a contract where they can take it away and give it to someone else. So, and we talked about this our eToll has been strong. This is something that we've been doing for 8 years. If you look at our investor presentation, and that is on the website, please go take a look at it. It does explain how we've been in the eToll business for the past 8 years, but it also makes arguments to why we believe we're going to be in the eToll business for many more years to come, because growing our eToll business is one of our 4 pillars in our business plan, and we do want to continue to expand on it. The next sort of point I want to try and sort of handle is the diversification. Okay, absolutely, I do agree that as a company we need to diversify, but that is not happening because our work with eToll is risky. It's happening because eToll has a ceiling. It's a $3 to $4 or $5 billion industry. There are other sectors and other opportunities that are significantly larger in opportunity. You know, fuel is one of them. We've talked about that in our investor presentation. It's a 60 billion kwacha industry. The levies, the work that we do in councils with markets and bus stations, if we can unlock some of the political issues there, that is an opportunity for us. If we can expand into the region, that is an opportunity for us. So eToll is our anchor, and we've done well at it, and we've done well at it by competing. Okay? But our ambition is far bigger than tolling, and that is where the diversification conversation is happening. But by the way, it's not that we need to diversify, we already are. Yesterday I was on ZNBC and I talked about how a few months ago we were 13 employees within the company. That was actually by choice. We were very lean back then. We were cleaning up our eToll business, focusing on that, and we were not trying to diversify. What we wanted to show the investment public with our financial results is that we can make money, we can pay dividends, and we can be consistent, and we are well run. Okay? Diversification takes resources, it takes people, so you have to be careful when we do it. But now is the right time for us. Now we have 38 employees, and you know what's brilliant is we have 38 employees now, but we actually had our best month ever financially. So let me just touch on that a little bit. Let's just talk about the IPO here and the motivation around it. Because raising money for this IPO was probably the 4th or 5th reason we did it. And I want you to think about the numbers for a moment. And these numbers are in the prospectus. We're going to make 15 million kwacha in profit this year. We have actually already paid out 5.3 million in dividends this year already. That is documented. And the IPO itself, we're going to raise 9 to 10 million kwacha because a component of the IPO, and again, this is in the prospectus, we're actually taking those shares and giving them to our employees. So raising money was not the main point. Raising money is actually the very thing you're telling us to do, diversification. And what do I mean by that? This IPO is about visibility, credibility, repositioning, expanding our footprint. So when you go public, it's a statement of intent that we want to grow beyond tolling, and we want to participate meaningfully in what's happening in the country's tech space. So the IPO itself has already triggered the very diversification that you're telling us to go after. Since the announcement, in fact, actually, this is one of the things that I actually talk about. 3 months ago, many of you actually did not know what Dot Com Zambia did, how we made our money, what sort of business we are. Now you all know. And now you're asking questions, which is brilliant. That is actually what we wanted, okay? Because now everyone is looking at our business, good or bad, the awareness is now there. And what's been happening behind the scenes is people are now saying, my goodness, they are a legit tech company, okay? And there are conversations happening, new opportunities happening. Even before we do the IPO, there's actually a deal happening right now simply because we became more visible. And I'm just going to end with sort of what a clear example of one of the minor elements of how we're already diversifying, because something that's happening is a lot of people are giving us praise for the IPO website and the way we've done it. It's going to be the first IPO that's 100% digital. Okay? No papers, no queues, just fully digital onboarding and digitization. I know what we've built. It's a world-class platform, and we did that intentionally, not only to showcase the capability of our technology team, but also as a form of diversification. Because what happens when the next IPO occurs? What are people going to say? Do it the way .com did it. But they're going to say, but we're not a tech company, so go and hire .com. And I don't want to get into the secrets of the revenue model, but you're already testing one of our diversified products in our new way. So again, I just want to sort of clarify, because this is one thing people have been hitting home about. The next episodes will not be as long, but this IPO has made Dot Com Zambia visible in a way that money cannot buy. And because finally people know what we do, opportunities are actually being unlocked. And even when we talk about the 4 pillars, it's, we've got our intermediate plans, the products that we are diversifying, the e-levy, some of the intellectual property, the fuel, those are intermediate plans. But being public as well is we want a seat at the table. We want to be able to go to government one day and say, hey, you're thinking about a 700 million kwacha PPP. We can do that. Things that we could not do if we remained as a private company. So I hope that clarifies in a lot more detail than I would have liked how the whole eToll structure works and how we are thinking about diversification. All right, Mulenga, all right, your third and final question is, I stand to be corrected, but I feel the NRFA toll hikes and collections from the new TKC Plaza are single instant events. You do stand to be corrected, actually. It is not a single instant event. We did grow by 165% in 2024, but that did not come from one event. It was a combination, and here's why. The toll fees themselves only rose by 60%. This was a combination of how we were actually able to get new clients, the new relationship we have with private toll plazas, which is independent of what we're doing with the NRFA. That was a new revenue stream that we were able to bring on board. And so that is why in 2024, our revenue was 530 million. This year, we've built on that, and our revenue is going to be 630 million. Now, please go and look, either watch it or read it, the 2026 budget that the Minister of Finance gave. In that, he did announce select toll adjustments. Some toll prices are going up. So here's how that impacts us. When we look at our business line currently over the last, let's just say the last 3 months, because our business has actually been growing since we announced the IPO. If we look at that and we now say, what will that revenue look like if we substitute the prices of 2025 with the future prices of 2026? It's actually going to mean that our business, all things being equal, will be over 800 million. But now think about that. We already know that we're going to grow to 800 million without doing anything. But we're not going to do nothing. We've already have a larger sales team. We're going to do more marketing and visibility. I've already indicated that just doing the IPO alone has made us more visible to the marketplace. So the question becomes is, what are we really going to grow by? So it's not a single event where you can say, oh no, we have to go back and write it off. It was an event that allowed us to grow. And events like, for example, toll prices going up will allow us to grow even further. So I hope that one I answered a little bit briefly, but I hope at least that answers your question. And again, I thank you. And what I'm encouraging everyone to do is, this is why you do. This is not only about being an IPO. I think for any entrepreneur, if you are going to go out there and you want to take money from able, to address their concerns, And people are going to tell you no. I mean, I talked about it that, when I tried to raise money, I must have talked to over 100 investors. A lot of them were skeptical. A lot of them didn't want for various reasons. 98 of them did say no. Only 2 eventually ended up investing. When you go public, that is the process you have to go through. And not everyone is going to like our business. Not everyone is going to agree with our strategy, which is perfectly okay. But it's the people that do agree. But part of making them comfortable is understanding. Even when you become shareholders, you have a voice. You can come to an annual general meeting and you can say, I want to be heard. I want management to address this concern that I have. So the fact that you've raised concerns is what being a public company is all about. And I thank you for that. And what I'm going to ask everyone to do is, first and foremost, please read the prospectus. Please look at the investor presentation, because I think a lot of your questions are actually there. But if you have other questions, come to some of the town halls that we are having, come to the road shows, or send an email to ipo@dotcomzambia.com. And tomorrow I will pick 2 or 3 of them. And trust me, I will answer them very briefly. Not today's one. Today's one's a special episode, and we will answer them briefly. And we will continue to do that in the interest of transparency, because that is what being a public entity is all about. I am asking money from you, and you have every right to question management in what we are doing, what our strategies are, and how we are going to make you as shareholders hopefully wealthier.